So here's the thing about the Galactic Council's Archaeological Commission. They love being right. And for the past 12,000 years, they'd been absolutely certain about one thing. The Prism of Eternity was dead. Not sleeping, not dormant. Dead. Capital D, write it in every textbook, publish 10 papers about it dead. Dr. Velkus had built his entire career on this. 347 years of academic prestige, all based on the fact that he was the foremost expert on an artifact that did absolutely nothing. He'd written books, given lectures, received awards. The Prism sat in its climate-controlled display case aboard the Council flagship like the galaxy's most expensive paperweight, and Velkus loved telling everyone exactly why it would never, ever work again. Enter Marcus Webb, who was having the worst month of his life. 2 weeks ago, he'd been hauling a cargo container full of bathroom fixtures to a mining colony on the edge of human space. Toilets, mainly. Some sinks. A truly unfortunate number of bidets that someone in procurement had ordered by accident. Then his freighter hit a spatial anomaly that wasn't supposed to exist, got spat out 3 sectors away, and he'd spent the last 14 days being processed by council bureaucracy. They'd poked him, scanned him, asked him the same 17 questions in 42 different ways. Apparently, humans were a newer species on the galactic scene, and the council was deeply fascinated by the fact that Marcus had survived something that should have turned him into subatomic particles. They kept asking him how he felt, like he was going to suddenly sprout superpowers or explain the secrets of the universe. Marcus felt tired and hungry and really, really annoyed. The diplomatic tour of the flagship was supposed to be an honor. Ambassador Krill, a 7-foot-tall insectoid bureaucrat with a voice like a filing cabinet being dragged across concrete, kept emphasizing this. "You should feel privileged," Krill said for the 8th time, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. "Very few outsiders are granted access to our most precious artifacts." Marcus was thinking about sandwiches. Not the lavender-scented protein bars they'd been feeding him. Not the crystallized nutrient paste that apparently passed for fine dining among the Luxon energy beings. An actual sandwich, bread, meat, maybe some cheese that didn't taste like disappointment. He was so lost in this fantasy that he didn't notice when the tour group stopped. Marcus walked straight into the display case, his hand smacked against the transparent barrier, which then touched the prism itself through some unfortunate alignment of angles and cosmic bad luck. For a microsecond, Marcus' palm was in direct contact with an artifact that hadn't responded to anyone in 12 millennia. The prism exploded with light, not metaphorically, not gradually. It went from completely inert to supernova bright in the span of a heartbeat. The entire chamber flooded with colors that didn't have names, and a sound like reality clearing its throat echoed through the flagship. Dr. Velkus hit the floor like someone had cut his strings. Ambassador Krill made a noise that probably translated to several profanities. Security alarms screamed, doors sealed, and Marcus stood there, hand still on the case, thinking, "I am so incredibly fired." The diplomatic holding room was nice, as far as places you got detained went. Comfortable chairs, decent lighting, a window that showed the stars streaming by, which would have been calming if Marcus wasn't pretty sure he was about to become a galactic incident. 3 aliens sat across from him, and they each had very different opinions about what to do with the human who'd woken up their dead god. Ambassador Krill had recovered from the shock and was now buried in a datapad, scrolling through what appeared to be several thousand pages of regulations. Form 7743B clearly states that unauthorized activation of Class Omega artifacts requires immediate quarantine and a tribunal hearing within 72 standard cycles. However, subsection 49 indicates that if the activation was accidental, we need Form 7744 through 7751, unless the individual is considered a diplomatic guest, which triggers an entirely different protocol tree. Commander Thex, a reptilian being who looked like someone had given a crocodile military training and a very bad attitude, slammed a clawed hand on the table. "Forget the paperwork. How'd you do it, human? What's the trick? Are you a weapon?" "I'm a freight hauler," Marcus said for the 15th time. "I haul freight, toilets mostly, sometimes sinks. Last week, a truly unreasonable number of bidets." "Nobody accidentally activates the prism of eternity," Thex growled. Well, I didn't exactly do it on purpose. I was thinking about sandwiches. The third interrogator, a young alien that looked like someone had crossed a dolphin with a bird and given it opposable thumbs, bounced in their seat. This was junior analyst Pip, and Pip was having the best day of their life. "This is amazing," Pip chirped, taking notes at a speed that seemed physically impossible. "Do you know what this means? The prism hasn't responded to anyone. Not the Mindari telepaths, not the Luxon energy forms, not even the Chronite computational matrices, and they're literally living math. But a human who was thinking about food? This is incredible. Can you describe the sandwich?" "Can I describe the sandwich?" "For the record, yes. Was it a specific sandwich, a memory, a hypothetical sandwich? This could be important." Marcus stared at Pip, then at Thex, then at Krill, who was still scrolling through regulations with the intensity of someone searching for a loophole in reality itself. "Okay," Marcus said slowly. "I'm going to need someone to explain to me why an ancient space rock cares about my lunch plans." Krill looked up from the datapad. "The Prism of Eternity is not a space rock. It's the key to the Maker's archive. The Makers were the first intelligent species in this galaxy. They achieved technological transcendence approximately 12 million years ago and left behind a repository of all their knowledge, locked behind the prism. For 12,000 years, every species, every civilization, every individual, with even a hint of cosmic significance has tried to activate it. None have succeeded. Until you," Thex added, leaning forward with an expression that was probably meant to be intimidating, but mostly made him look constipated. "Which means either you're special or you're dangerous or both. I vote special." Pip raised a wing hand enthusiastically. Marcus rubbed his face. 2 weeks ago he'd been worried about making a delivery on time. Now he was apparently cosmically significant because he'd bumped into the galaxy's most important artifact while daydreaming about lunch. "Look," Marcus said, "I don't know what you want me to tell you. I'm not special. I barely passed flight school. I once tried to microwave ramen in the ship's navigation computer because I thought it was the food processor. I am aggressively, determinedly average." "The prism disagrees," Krill said. "Then the prism has terrible judgment." Pip was writing this down. Does human culture value self-deprecation as a survival mechanism? Is this a defense strategy? Commander Thex stood up, all 7 feet of scaled muscle and military paranoia. "We need to run tests. Figure out what makes you different. If humans have some kind of advantage, some compatibility with Maker technology, the Council needs to know. And if I refuse?" "You won't," Krill said, not looking up from the datapad. "Because according to Regulation 8834, individuals who activate Class Omega artifacts are automatically designated as galactic assets until a full investigation is complete. You're not under arrest. You're under protection. There's a difference. Doesn't feel like a difference." "That's because you're thinking about it wrong," Pip said helpfully. "You're not a prisoner, you're a key. And keys go where locks are." Marcus looked at the 3 aliens. The bureaucrat who spoke in forms, the commander who saw weapons everywhere, the analyst who was way too excited about all of this. "I really just want a sandwich," Marcus said. "After the tests," Thex replied. "After the paperwork," Krill added. "After we make history," Pip chirped. Marcus put his head in his hands and wondered if the spatial anomaly could have possibly been worse than this. Dr. Velkus had recovered from his fainting spell, but not from his shattered worldview. He stood in the research lab, surrounded by enough monitoring equipment to scan a small moon, and stared at Marcus like he was the equation that didn't make sense. "This is impossible," Velkus muttered for the 30th time. "You're biologically unremarkable, genetically standard for your species. Neural patterns are within normal parameters. There's nothing, absolutely nothing, that should make you compatible with Maker technology." "Thanks," Marcus said, really feeling the love here. They'd been at this for 6 hours. 6 hours of tests, scans, and increasingly absurd experiments that made Marcus feel like a lab rat who'd signed the worst contract in history. First, They'd tried the scientific approach: DNA analysis, brain scans, chemical composition of his blood, his bones, his various bodily fluids that Marcus would have preferred to keep private. They'd compared him to the genetic database of every known species in Council space. The result? Marcus was perfectly, boringly human. Then they'd moved on to the metaphysical approach. They had him meditate. Well, they tried. Marcus sat in a chair for 40 minutes thinking about absolutely nothing while Velkus and 3 other researchers monitored his brainwaves. When Marcus touched the prism, it lit up like a small star. When the Mindari telepath tried, deeply focused and cosmically attuned, nothing happened. Perhaps it's cultural, one researcher suggested. So they played him music. Human music, specifically. Everything from classical symphonies to rock to that one pop song that Marcus had been trying to forget for 3 years. Then they had him touch the prism while humming. Still worked. Had the Luxon energy being try it while playing the same music. Nothing. Maybe it's dietary, another researcher offered. They tried to replicate his exact nutritional intake: coffee, protein bars, the questionable gas station food Marcus had lived on during long hauls. They fed it to a volunteer from a species with similar digestive systems. Had them touch the prism. 0 response. Velkus was pacing now, his forearms gesticulating wildly. This defies every principle of archaeological resonance theory. The prism should respond to evolutionary advancement, to psychic development, to computational complexity. It should not, under any circumstances, respond to a species that still argues about whether their planet is warming. We figured that out, actually, Marcus said. It's definitely warming. You figured it out after nearly destroying your own atmosphere. Nobody's perfect. Pip was documenting everything with the enthusiasm of someone who knew they were witnessing history. Dr. Velkus, what if we're thinking about this wrong? What if the prism isn't looking for advancement? What if it's looking for something else? Like what? Velkus snapped. I don't know. Chaos? Unpredictability? Humans are kind of famous for doing things that don't make sense. That's not a qualification, Velkus said. That's a liability. Commander Thex, who'd been watching from the corner like a disapproving gargoyle, stepped forward. We're wasting time. The prism responds to him. We need access to the archive. Cut off his hand. Use it as a biological key. Everyone stopped. You want to cut off my what now? Marcus said. Your hand, the one that touches the prism. Basic tactical thinking. Remove the variable, maintain the result. That's not how biology works, Pip protested. It's how problem-solving works. Ambassador Krill, who'd been standing in the doorway reviewing paperwork this entire time, clicked his mandibles. That would require Forms 9821 through 9847, and we'd need approval from the Ethics Committee, which is currently backlogged by 47 years. So I'm safe because of bureaucracy? Marcus asked. For now, Krill confirmed. Marcus stood up. 6 hours of being treated like a puzzle had given him time to think, and he'd realized something important. Right now, he had exactly one thing the Council wanted: the ability to activate the prism. That made him valuable. That gave him leverage. Here's the deal, Marcus said. I'll help you. I'll do your tests. I'll try to access your archive or whatever. But I want a few things in return. Velkus looked offended. You don't get to make demands. You're a galactic asset. I'm a human who can activate your cosmic paperweight. Big difference. So here's what I want. A ship. A good one. Supplies. Safe passage back to human space. And yes, a meal that doesn't taste like someone's perfume collection. Those are my terms. Thex growled. We could just force you. You could try. But I'm guessing the prism won't work if I'm unconscious. Or dead. Or missing a hand. Call it a hunch. Krill and Velkus exchanged looks. Pip was practically vibrating with excitement. Fine, Velkus said through what Marcus assumed were clenched teeth, though it was hard to tell with his species. But you will make one more attempt, a proper attempt. You'll try to fully interface with the prism and access the archive. And if it works, then you get your ship and your sandwich. Deal. Marcus didn't mention that he had no idea how to properly interface. with an ancient alien artifact. He'd literally just touched it while thinking about lunch. But he'd learned a long time ago that confidence could get you pretty far, even when you had no idea what you were doing. Especially when you had no idea what you were doing. They brought Marcus back to the display chamber. The prism sat there innocent and inert, like it hadn't just caused a galaxy-wide crisis by responding to a human who was hungry. Dr. Velkus had set up enough monitoring equipment to shame a small observatory. This time we document everything, every reading, every fluctuation, every quantum signature. When the archive opens, we need to understand why. No pressure, Marcus muttered. The room was crowded. Council representatives from a dozen species, scientists, security, Ambassador Krill with his datapad, Commander Thex with his hand on what Marcus assumed was a weapon, Pip with a recording device and an expression of pure joy. Marcus approached the prism slowly. It was about the size of a basketball, hovering in its containment field, looking like someone had crystallized a piece of a rainbow. Up close, it was actually kind of beautiful. Okay, Marcus said. So I just touch it? Touch it with intent, Velkus instructed. Focus on accessing the archive, on understanding the makers, on unlocking the knowledge within. Right, intent, got it. Marcus reached out and placed both hands on the prism. The universe exploded. Not literally, but that's what it felt like. Marcus's consciousness got yanked out of his body and pulled into somewhere else, somewhere vast. And he wasn't alone. Every person in the chamber was there with him, their minds connected through the prism's interface. They were standing in a library, but not a normal library. This was a space that defied geometry, where shelves stretched into infinity in directions that shouldn't exist, filled with books and data crystals and information storage formats that didn't have names yet. The air hummed with knowledge, and in the center of it all, there was a hologram. It flickered to life, showing a figure that looked remarkably ordinary, bipedal, 2 arms, a face that could have been human or could have been a dozen other species. It was smiling. Hello, the hologram said. If you're seeing this, congratulations. You found the key. Literally. The prism's been waiting a while. We were starting to think nobody would ever figure it out. The voice was warm, casual, completely at odds with the grandeur of the archive around them. I'm one of the makers, the hologram continued. Or I was. Depends on how you define time and existence, and we're not going to get into that because it gets complicated. Point is, we built this archive about 12 million years ago, give or take a few epochs, and we locked it behind the prism because we wanted to make sure the right people found it. Dr. Velkus's consciousness was practically vibrating. The makers. You're really them. What happened? Where did you go? Why did you leave? The hologram laughed. That's like 3 different questions, and I'm on a timer here. This message is old, really old. But here's the short version. We didn't ascend. We didn't transcend. We just moved on, built our civilization, reached our peak, realized we'd learned everything we wanted to learn from this galaxy, and went looking for new questions. Before we left, we built this archive with everything we'd figured out. Technology, science, philosophy, the really good recipes, all of it. Why lock it? Pip asked, awestruck. Because we knew other species would evolve, would advance. And we wanted to make sure whoever found this wasn't just smart. Smart's easy. The galaxy's full of smart. We wanted to find species that had something else, something we valued. What? Marcus asked. The hologram turned toward him, even though it shouldn't have been able to see him. Chaos, creativity, the ability to look at a problem and come up with a solution that's completely insane but somehow works. We called it productive chaos. The ability to be smart and stupid at the same time. To be logical and emotional. To build something incredible and then immediately use it for something we never intended. The hologram gestured around the archive. Every species we encountered while we were around had specialized, got really, really good at one thing. Telepaths who could read minds, but couldn't understand why anyone would lie. Energy beings who could manipulate matter, but couldn't understand why anyone would build something imperfect. Computer minds that could calculate anything but couldn't understand why anyone would take the long way home. They all evolved past something, became efficient, perfect. And you didn't want perfect? Velkus asked, and Marcus could hear the confusion in his voice. Perfect is boring. Perfect doesn't innovate. Perfect doesn't look at a broken ship and fix it with duct tape and prayer. Perfect doesn't accidentally discover new things while trying to solve completely different problems. We were messy, chaotic. We built this archive with the same energy we did everything else, throwing ideas at the wall and seeing what stuck. The hologram smiled wider. So we designed the prism to look for species that hadn't specialized themselves into a corner. Species that were still figuring things out, still making mistakes, still approaching problems with creativity instead of just computational power or evolutionary advantages. We wanted to find beings who were smart enough to survive but dumb enough to try things that should not work. Commander Thex's consciousness radiated disbelief. You're saying the greatest test in galactic history was looking for stupidity? Not stupidity, productive chaos, the kind of thinking that lets you be brilliant and ridiculous in the same breath. And apparently, the hologram looked directly at Marcus again. You found us a human. Perfect. Marcus wasn't sure whether to be insulted or complimented. The prism's been testing everyone who touched it for 12,000 years. The hologram continued, looking for that spark, that combination of intelligence and improvisation, logic and emotion, planning and winging it. You all had parts of it. The telepaths had emotional depth. The energy beings had adaptability. The computer minds had logical creativity. But humans? Humans are the whole messy package. You're exactly the kind of chaotic problem solvers we were hoping would eventually show up. Dr. Velkus was experiencing what could only be described as an academic breakdown. 347 years of being the expert on the prism, and it turned out he'd been completely wrong about what it was looking for. So what now? Ambassador Krill asked, ever practical. The hologram spread its arms. Now you have a choice. The human, specifically, Marcus, right? You can access the archive, but only once. Only you. And you can take one thing. One piece of technology. One piece of knowledge. One answer to one question. That's the deal. We're not just handing over the keys to reality. You have to choose what matters. The consciousness of every being in the chamber focused on Marcus. Oh, Marcus said. That's just great. The representative started immediately. Take the weapon systems, Commander Thex urged. The archive must contain military technology beyond our understanding. Defensive capabilities, offensive options. Ways to protect Council space from any threat. The medical knowledge, a Mindari telepath interjected. Think of the diseases we could cure, the lifespans we could extend, the suffering we could end. Faster-than-light technology, a Chronite computational being suggested. True instantaneous travel. We could connect the entire galaxy in real time. The voices overlapped. A dozen species, all with different priorities, all trying to convince Marcus to choose their particular need. And Marcus stood in the center of this cosmic library, surrounded by more knowledge than he could process, with the weight of an entire galaxy's expectations on his shoulders. Give me a minute, Marcus said. I need to think. You have access to the greatest repository of knowledge in galactic history, Velkus said, his academic greed winning over his shattered worldview. What is there to think about? Choose the fundamental unified theory, the source code of reality, the answer to existence itself. Yeah, that's kind of the problem, Marcus replied. He walked through the archive, his consciousness drifting between shelves of impossible knowledge. He could see it all in theory. Technologies that could reshape matter, philosophies that explained consciousness, mathematical proofs that would revolutionize science. It was infinite. It was overwhelming. It was completely missing the point. Pip drifted over to him, quieter than the others. You're not going to take technology, are you? Am I that obvious? I've been watching you for the past few hours. You keep asking why, not how. Why? Marcus nodded slowly. The Makers left this message for a reason. They didn't just want someone to pass a test. They wanted someone to understand what the test meant. And I think I'm starting to get it. He turned to face the assembled consciousness of the Galactic Council's finest minds. You all want me to take something that'll make you better, Marcus said. Stronger, faster, smarter, more efficient. But that's exactly what the makers were warning against. They left this place for species like mine, messy species, chaotic species, the ones who haven't specialized themselves into corners. And the first thing you want to do is use their knowledge to become more specialized. That's called progress, Velkus argued. No, that's called missing the point. The makers didn't leave because they ran out of technology. They left because they'd learned everything they wanted to learn here. They moved on. And they left this archive not as a shortcut, but as a reminder. Marcus looked at the hologram of the maker, still smiling in the center of the library. I know what I want, Marcus said. The archive hummed. Ask. I don't want technology. I don't want a weapon or a cure or a faster ship. I want you to show the council what you showed me. I want them to understand what you're actually trying to tell us. That's your choice? Understanding? That's my choice. The hologram's smile grew wider. Now that's the kind of productive chaos we were hoping for. The archive responded. What happened next was impossible to describe in linear terms, but every consciousness in that shared space experienced it. The Maker's archive opened, not its technology, but its memory. They saw the Maker's history, not as a species that ascended to perfection, but as a civilization that succeeded precisely because they never stopped being messy. They saw Maker scientists who discovered new physics while trying to build a better toaster, Maker engineers who solved complex problems with solutions that were technically incorrect but functionally perfect, Maker artists who created beauty from mistakes, Maker philosophers who found wisdom in contradiction. Every major advancement in Maker civilization had come from someone doing something that shouldn't have worked, but did. From accidents, from improvisation, from the kind of creative chaos that specialized species had evolved away from, and then the archive showed them something else. The current council species and their own histories. The Mindari telepaths who'd achieved perfect mental harmony but lost the ability to understand deception or conflict. The Luxon energy beings who could manipulate matter at will, but couldn't comprehend why anyone would build something inefficient. The Chronite computers who could calculate anything but had forgotten how to be surprised. Each species had gained something incredible by specializing, but they'd lost something too. The messy, chaotic, unpredictable creativity that drove innovation. Dr. Velkus saw his 347 years of academic certainty and realized that his obsession with categorizing and understanding had made him miss the beauty of not knowing. Commander Thex saw his military career and understood that the best victories in history had come from tactics that broke every rule. Ambassador Krill saw his mountains of regulations and realized that the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happened when people ignored protocol and just talked. The archive was showing them that being perfectly evolved wasn't the goal. Being willing to be imperfect was. The galaxy doesn't need another weapon, the Maker hologram said, speaking to everyone now. It doesn't need another shortcut. It needs to remember that the best things come from chaos, from trying things that might not work, from being smart enough to be a little bit stupid. The vision faded. The shared consciousness dissolved. Marcus and the others found themselves back in the display chamber, standing around the prism, which was now, once again, completely inert. It's dormant, Velkus whispered. It's done, Marcus corrected. It delivered its message. Now it's waiting for the next time the galaxy needs to be reminded. The room was silent. Every being present was processing what they'd experienced, what they'd learned, what they'd seen about themselves and their species. Pip was the first to speak. That was the most incredible thing I've ever experienced. That was a waste, Commander Thex said, but his voice lacked conviction. That was exactly what we needed, Ambassador Krill said quietly, setting down his datapad. 3 days later, Marcus stood in the docking bay of the Council flagship, next to a ship that was significantly nicer than his destroyed freighter. It was sleek, fast, and had a food processor that actually worked. Krill had delivered on the deal, though Marcus suspected the ambassador had enjoyed filling out the procurement forms way more than was healthy. "You're sure you don't want to stay?" Pip asked, hovering nearby. "The Council's offering you a position as Special Advisor on Human-Maker Relations. It comes with a really nice office." "I'm sure," Marcus said, checking the ship's systems. "I've got a delivery to complete. 3 months late, but still. Pretty sure the mining colony doesn't need those toilets anymore, but I should at least file the paperwork." "You're going to file paperwork about delivering toilets after accessing the greatest repository of knowledge in galactic history? Someone's got to maintain standards." Dr. Velkus approached, looking like a person who'd had their worldview shattered and was still picking up the pieces. "I wanted to apologize," he said stiffly, "for doubting you, for treating you like a problem to be solved rather than a person to be understood." "You wrote 10 papers about how the prism was dead," Marcus said. "I get it. Nobody likes being wrong. I've spent my career trying to be right, trying to categorize everything, understand everything, control everything. The archive showed me that some of the best discoveries in my own life came from mistakes I made. Accidents. Things that shouldn't have worked, but did." Velkus extended one of his 4 hands. "Perhaps being wrong occasionally is something I should practice." Marcus shook his hand. "Start small. Try being wrong about lunch orders. Work your way up." Commander Thex was next, looking uncomfortable in a way that suggested he'd never actually apologized for anything before. "I may have suggested cutting off your hand." "You did suggest that, yes. It was tactical thinking, efficiency, the kind of solution I've been trained to default to. The archive reminded me that the best military victories in Council history came from commanders who broke protocol, who improvised, who did things that made no sense until they worked." He paused. "I still think you should have taken the weapon systems. Of course you do, but I understand why you didn't. And I'm trying to understand that not every problem needs a violent solution. It's difficult." "Start with something easy," Marcus suggested. "Next time something breaks, try fixing it before you shoot it." "That seems inefficient." "That's the point." Ambassador Krill was last, and he was holding a small package. A gift. For the journey. Marcus opened it. Inside was a book printed on actual paper. Human Idioms and Phrases, a diplomatic guide. "I spent the last 3 days reading it," Krill said. "Humans have 17 different ways to say they're busy, none of which directly state they're busy. You have phrases like break a leg that mean good luck. You say piece of cake about things that are easy, despite cake being notoriously difficult to bake properly." "That sounds about right." "It makes no sense. It's inefficient. It's chaotic. It's exactly what the galaxy needs more of." Krill clicked his mandibles in what Marcus had learned was the equivalent of a smile. "I've spent 400 years trying to create perfect regulations for every situation. The archive showed me that the most important diplomatic breakthroughs in Council history happened when beings ignored the rules and just talked to each other. Perhaps I should try that occasionally. Revolutionary. It will require a significant mindset adjustment, but I'm willing to try." Starting with this, thank you, Marcus Webb, for reminding us that being a little bit messy is not a flaw to be corrected. Marcus climbed into his new ship, settling into the pilot's seat. Through the viewport, he could see Pip, Velkus, Thex, and Krill watching him prepare for departure. 3 days ago, they'd seen him as a problem, a puzzle, a key to unlock something they wanted. Now they saw him as something else. A reminder. A message from a species 12 million years gone, telling the galaxy that perfection was overrated. The ship's systems hummed to life. Marcus ran through the pre-flight checklist, then opened the communication channel. "This is Marcus Webb to Council Flagship. Thanks for the ship, thanks for not cutting off my hand, and thanks for the reminder that humans aren't cosmically significant, we're just cosmically messy, which apparently is good enough." "Safe travels, Marcus," Pip responded. "Will you come back?" "Maybe, if I'm ever in the neighborhood, or if you need someone to remind you that it's okay to be wrong sometimes. We'll probably need that reminder often." Most people do. Marcus closed the channel and set course for human space. 3 months late on a delivery of bathroom fixtures that nobody needed anymore, with a ship full of supplies, and a head full of memories about the day he accidentally became the key to the galaxy's greatest mystery. The stars stretched ahead of him. Somewhere out there, human space was waiting. His company was probably furious. The mining colony had definitely found other toilets, and Marcus was going to have to write the most absurd incident report in the history of interstellar commerce. Delayed by ancient cosmic puzzle. Found meaning of galactic existence. Discovered that being human is apparently a universal qualification for accessing forbidden knowledge. Please authorize hazard pay. He pulled out a sandwich. An actual sandwich, made in the ship's food processor with bread and meat and cheese that didn't taste like disappointment or lavender. He took a bite, savoring the simple pleasure of food that made sense. Behind him, the Council flagship grew smaller in the viewport. Ahead of him, 3 months of travel through empty space. Time to think. Time to process. Time to appreciate the cosmic joke that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had spent 12,000 years trying to unlock a puzzle that was solved by a freight hauler who was thinking about lunch. Marcus laughed, alone in his ship, and plotted a course for home. The Prism of Eternity sat in its display case aboard the Council flagship, inert and silent, waiting. Ready for the next time the galaxy forgot that being a little bit messy wasn't a bug in the code of existence. It was a feature. And somewhere, 12 million years away, the makers were probably laughing too.